Hi guys, Shavua Tov. This is for the assignment, the project from Shiurim Yod to Yod Daled. So I want to make this my goal in this project. What you should be, what hope is, what you should get from this, is that you should be forced to have a total clarity of the Gemara, really to think about it, not just to repeat back words, and to really understand it well. And the hope is that by going through by understanding step by step, the give and the take, you're going to really come to an understanding of it. Because I have to tell you, there are times there's such good, there are great things to be said in this Gemara. There's things that you are totally capable of asking great kashas, saying great stuff on this Gemara, things that I haven't thought of, because you just have, many of you are smarter than me, many of you have new things to say, of new perspectives on things, and understand it well. Let's get it really well. So here we go. I'm going to say over step by step. In Shir Yod, starting from Shir Yod. Shir Yod, we have step one, we have a machlokas between Abaye and Rava about Yish or Lo Midas, whether it's considered Yish or not. What that means is, Abaye holds that Yish or Lo Midas is not considered Yish. If a person would give up hope of getting his object back if he knew that he lost it, can you keep it? Abaye says, Lo haviyish. It's not considered yish. You're not allowed to keep it. Rava holds it is considered a good giving up hope, haviyish, and you are allowed to keep it. That's step one. In step two, the Gemara is going to clarify which case they argue about. And the Gemara says they don't argue in a case where the lost object, has a siman, it has a sign on it, and you already picked it up. There, even if for some reason you know that the owner will be miyayesh, you happen to know the situation, you see he's about to be miyayesh, and even if he is miyayesh, says the Gemara, that's still Abaye and Rava would hold that you're obligated to give it back. Why? Because since you already picked it up to return it, we explained, the obligation to return it doesn't go away. His full ownership might have been lessened by the Yish, but your obligation to return it was already alive, and it must be carried out. Step number three, the Gemara says, they also don't argue in a case called Zutel Shel Yam, that even if the object has a siman on it, but if it got lost in the sea, then the halacha would be that both Rava and Abaye would agree that you don't have to return it. The concept is that something lost to the world, you don't have to return. Even if by chance it came back onto shore or something like that, it's considered gone. It's considered destroyed. Step four. The Gemara says, so where do they argue? It's by an item that doesn't have a siman on it. If an object doesn't have a siman, so the owner, once he realizes that he lost it, he definitely is going to give up hope because he has no way to retrieve it. He has no way to prove that it's his. If even anybody finds it, they're going to keep it, or they're not going to have any way to give it back to the owner. They could give it. What that means is that the owner can't prove that it's his. So that's where Abaye holds. If you find an object that doesn't have a siman on it, you are not allowed to keep it, because unless you know somehow that the owner actually gave up hope before you found it. And Rava holds that no, you're allowed to take it and you're allowed to keep it. That's step number four. Step number five. Now the Gemara begins with proofs. And if you look in our Mishnah, we have every case of our Mishnah seems to be a proof to Rava and against Abaye, because our Mishnah gave a whole list of things that don't have a siman, and the Mishnah said that you're allowed to keep them. Why are you allowed to keep them? Presumably the reason is because, like Rava, that we don't care that the owner didn't give up hope. We just want to know if the owner would give up hope. So step number five, the Gemara adds a question from the Mishnah of a case of fruits, scattered fruits. The Mishnah said if you find scattered fruits, you're allowed to keep it. Asks the Gemara that according to Abaye, that should not be true. It should not be the case. Simply because the owner, you the finder, you don't know that the owner gave up hope or not. How do you know? So how could you then keep it? It still is belonging to the owner. So that's That's straight up stealing something, taking something that still belongs to the owner. On this, step number 6, the Gemara answers that this is talking about really when the Mishnah said you could keep fruits, it was not talking about finding fruits just in the public area. It meant a very specific case. It was a place that the owner knew that the fruits were there, but he left them. What we're trying to figure out is that he left them there. Did he leave them there on purpose? In the case of Peres Mufuzarim in the Mishnah, you were allowed to assume that the owner left them there on purpose. That's step number 6. This was the whole thing that the Gemara spoke about, just to remind you of Kav and Arba Amos and the threshing place, right? And that's why you're allowed to assume that the owner knows it's there and it's a threshing place and he's not going to come back because it's a Kav and Arba Amos. It's not worth so much that it's worth the bother of coming back. Step number 7. The Gemara also asks about money. The Mishnah says that money that's found, you're allowed to keep. Why are you allowed to keep it? How do you know that the owner gave up hope? Step number 7, the Gemara answers. I think we're at 7. The Gemara answers, no, we're at 5, 6, 7, 8. No, now we're at 8, I think. 7, 8, and the Gemara says in step 8 that a person, Rabbi Yitzchak said a statement that people check their pockets for their money. They're OCD about cash. So they're always checking their pockets. So therefore, you're allowed to assume that by the time you found the money, that the owner has already given up hope. Step number 9. The Gemara continues to ask from the Mishnah, where it said, Igule devela, and bread of a baker you're allowed to keep. Once again, according to Abaye, if you don't know that the owner gave up hope, you should never be allowed to keep it. So even though these items have no siman, they have no sign on it, still, why are you allowed to keep them? They still might belong to the original owner because he didn't give up hope yet. The Gemara says in step number 10 that they're heavy, these items, and again, the owner will realize that by the time you find it, you are allowed to assume that the owner has realized that he has given up, that he has dropped it. Point number 11, the Gemara asks from tongues shaped purple wool, Lashonas Shalagama, and also the Mishnah there said you're allowed to keep it. Why are you allowed to keep it? According to Abaye, you should not be allowed to keep it because again, you don't know that the owner gave up hope. Step number 12, the Gemara answers that these are important, it's valuable, and therefore, once again, a person will be OCD about it, he'll feel his pockets. Point number 13, now, the Gemara brings a Braisa, this is not from our Mishnah, it's a Braisa, again, also written from Tanam, and therefore, Abaye is not able to argue with it. The Gemara says, a person finds money in a shul, or in a Beit Midrash, or any place which is a public place, the halacha is he's allowed to keep it. Why again? Why are you allowed to keep it? But Abaye said that you're only if you know that the owner gave up hope are you allowed to keep it. And here, how are you supposed to know that the owner gave up hope? And the final step is now that this is where Rabbi Yitzchak said his statement that a person is OCD about money. We're talking about money. The person felt his pockets. You are allowed to assume that the owner has already realized that he has lost his money. And that is the whole Gemara in a nutshell. Okay, so get that clear. Hatzlacha Rabbah. Any questions, let me know.